Welcome back. I have another tricky question for you. And if you're able to get this, you've pretty much mastered hoisting. It's a really difficult question that comes up quite often in JavaScript interviews. Looking at this function, I've created a few things. Well, we have my favorite food, grapes, obviously. But then I changed my mind and I have a food thoughts function. And this food thoughts function is a function expression where I log my original favorite food, and then I change my favorite food to sushi, and then I console log my new favorite food. And then on line 11, we're going to execute and run the food thoughts function. Before I click run here, based on what you know about the creation phase, the execution phase, about hoisting, what do you think is going to be logged here? Pause the video if you want to try this out yourself. Otherwise, I'm going to click run. Let's find out. Original favorite food, undefined. New favorite food, sushi. Is that what you expected? I bet most of you thought the last line in our function, that is console log new favorite food to equal sushi, would work. But I bet this is surprising to some of you. Why do we get undefined here? And this goes back to what I said in the previous video. That is, hoisting happens on every execution context. Anytime we run a function, a new execution context gets created. And we have to go through the creation phase and execution phase again. So let's see what happens here. Well, the first line gets hoisted. So favorite food at the top becomes variable favorite food equals undefined. And remember, the JavaScript engine isn't actually moving these lines up. I just want to explain what's happening. But we assign favorite food to undefined. Favorite food now gets assigned to undefined. And I may have forgotten the variable keyword here. So that gets hoisted. And then we go to line 4. And line 4, we see a variable. So food thoughts also gets hoisted. So variable food thoughts is going to equal undefined. It's a variable. And we keep going, keep going, keep going. There's no more var, there's no more function at the beginning of the lines. So there you go. Our creation phase is done. So now during the execution phase, it's almost as if we don't need the variable keywords anymore because they've been created during the creation phase. So now we start executing the code. The first execution that we do is favorite food equals to grapes. All right. And then we have food thoughts that gets assigned this entire piece of function. We don't run this function. It just says, hey, food thoughts is going to equal this function. And then on line 14, we're going to run this function because the JavaScript engine is going to see these two brackets. Now, as soon as we run this function, a new execution context is created. And inside of this execution context, hoisting happens during the creation phase. So it's going to say, hey, I see variable here in this little world that we're in, and there's favorite food here. So I'm going to hoist that up, and by I mean the JavaScript engine, and it's going to hoist it up and say favorite food equals to undefined. And that's it. That's the only variable and function that it sees. So now it's almost as if during the execution phase, you're doing this. You're logging original favorite food is favorite food, which is undefined. Then favorite food becomes sushi, where we log favorite food. Now, looking at this, I hope you understand what's happening underneath the hood. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this idea of functions and scopes and what really happens here later on. But you might be asking yourself, isn't hoisting confusing? What happened to being predictable with our code and making sure that the compiler as well as humans can understand our code because it's predictable? And there are arguments about whether you should even use hoisting and whether hoisting is bad practice because we want to make code predictable, remember? And personally, doing things like this makes your code very unpredictable. And I recommend avoiding hoisting if you can. And you can do that, well, by not using the var keyword. So if we go back to our code the way it was before, like this, we can just simply use const and let that came with ES5 or ES6, something we're going to talk about a little bit later on. And that's going to give us an error because right now we're trying to take advantage of hoisting and, well, favorite food is not defined because it's defined here. And we catch that error ahead of time because now, as a developer, you're going to see, all right, this doesn't make sense. Because we're no longer using hoisting, this console log at the beginning, well, this is not going to work. So maybe we need to rewrite our code to have it make more sense instead of just relying on hoisting. But it is a pretty important concept in JavaScript. You're going to see it used all over the place. But I hope this is now a little bit easier for you to explain to others and work with yourself. I'll see you in the next video.